So I'm white British background. My parents originally came from Yorkshire, and they moved down to London because where they came from there was very little opportunity, and they obviously knew they wanted children. So they came down to London and worked very, very hard, alhamdulillah, in order to raise a family where there was greater opportunity. I'm the youngest of 3 children. I've got 2 older brothers, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
And I wasn't raised with any particular religious background. My dad's an atheist, so, and my mum always believes in like a higher power, like a god and angel, so she's quite spiritual in that sense, but we never had a specific religion put on us.
Okay. So. And would you say that your mother, was she just, as you say, just believed in something higher, a supreme being, or did she identify herself with any particular religion?
No, nothing in particular. I mean, it was just God. That's what it would come under. So it was in the terms of, you know, do you believe in God? She would obviously say yes, but it didn't come under Christianity or Judaism or anything else like that. So.
Okay. And despite this definition, i.e., you know, your dad being an atheist, very interested in science, and your mum believing in a higher power but not subscribing to any particular religion, I remember you saying to me off air that, however, if you were filling in a form and your religion was asked, you'd put...
It was Church of England.
Church of England.
Because we were all christened. Where my mum and dad came from, it was a fishing port. And when my mum grew up, you wasn't allowed in somebody's house unless you'd been christened because they thought they believed it brought bad luck. So I think maybe that was part of the reason why myself and my brothers were christened. I don't know whether you'd say it was superstition, but I guess in that terms it was a little bit of superstition, so...
Okay, alhamdulillah. And obviously we're still talking way before you even thought anything about Islam or encountered Islam. So what were your first experiences growing up of religion, be it Christianity, what it would have been Christianity in your case?
There's two main experiences that I remember. There's a physical experience, and I guess there's a experience where I acknowledged that there was a higher being, so to speak. The first one was I was 3. I was about 3 or 4, and we went to church at Christmas time. Not for necessarily religious reasons, I think more of a traditional thing. We went to church, and I don't remember anything about the service, but I do remember being given an orange with a bit of ribbon around it, with a candle in, which apparently is a Christingle. And that's one of my... I remember being very cold. It's called a Christingle.
Okay.
That's what I was told anyway. And that's my first experience of religion in a physical sense.
Okay.
And that's a memory that I guess has...
Stuck with you.
Stuck with me for whatever significance. That having the orange, smelling the orange, being in a church with obviously with my family as well. And the first time that I guess I would have acknowledged that there was a higher power, I was about 4 or 5, and I was at school, and I had a problem with one of my peers, one of my friends, and I disliked her. And I remember thinking in my mind that I should be really careful what I thought of her in my head, because God knows my thoughts, and I'll probably get in a bit of trouble if I'm thinking bad things about her. So that was my first real experience that I remember of acknowledging there was a God.
Okay.
So
would you say that you grew up, again, talking many years before you even came anywhere near Islam, would you say you grew up with a recognition of this higher being throughout your life?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt like I always, guess, believed in the term destiny, in the sense that life's been given to you for a reason. There's like a purpose for your life, but I knew of God, but I didn't know how to worship God. So it's like, I guess it's like being given a piece of equipment but not having the manual how to use it. That's how I would feel was before I found Islam. I knew there was God, I just didn't know how to worship God properly, in my opinion.
Sure. And What kind of influence did poetry play in your life in the early years? I know that you were interested quite a bit in poetry.
I've always really been interested in poetry because it's like it's expression in the form of words, which is really, it's like really obviously very powerful. And I remember reading the first time I ever came across the Quran and read it, a passage or some ayahs. And one of the things I remember reading, and it's still stuck with me now, even though it was about, I mean, now it's about 7 or 8 years ago now, when I first came across the Quran. There was a particular ayah where it describes the unbelievers on Judgment Day, and that they would be walking in darkness, and they would be blind and deaf, and Allah would give them mercy with like a flash of lightning, and then they'd be plunged into darkness again. And I remember reading that and it have been so powerful, and never reading other things. It was like I said, it was like poetry. And there was another part in the Quran where, of course, it says it challenges anybody to come and write a verse similar to that of the Quran.
Yes.
In order to prove that it's not the word of God.
Sure.
And the 1400 years, it's never been possible, it's never occurred. So that for me really did the Quran show that this is not something written by a man.
Yes.
The effect of it and the power of it can only come from a higher being.
All praise is due to God.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. But why the intrigue? Why the fascination with the Quran in the first place? I mean, I remember you saying something about you had some interaction with some friends who were Greek, Turkish, and Lebanese. But from Greek, Turkish, Lebanese friends to going to pick up the Quran, what was the incentive behind you doing so?
What I think, coming from an English culture, we very much keep ourselves to ourselves. That's sort of what the English people are like, I guess. We sort of close our doors, and what goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. When I had friends who had this mentality where like family was really important to them, and I used to see elements in them that used to intrigue me. So, for example, like, you know, they used to love their families and have really close relationships with their parents and things like that. And I used to quite admire they were quite patriotic to their, what I thought was like a religion or a culture. And I remember having a Lebanese friend who I used to see these elements in them, and they used to say they were Muslim. So I believed that was Islam, what they were showing, this patriotic thing for their country, and thinking that was actually what Islam was. And that I bought a Quran when I was 17. I didn't tell anybody, I just had it because I was intrigued, and I thought, well, they've led a different life to me, which I respect because they have this close family tie and this real strong love for who they are and what they believe in. So maybe if I read whatever it is that they've been reading, or i.e. the Quran, then I can understand and appreciate some of that. But what I soon realised was that there's a big difference between Islam and culture, and what I was experiencing was culture. I mean, of course, Islam does say that the family is important and loving your parents and things like that, but the actual other aspects that I was seeing wasn't actually Islam.
Okay.
It was a cultural thing.
Right, so your impression of Islam at that particular time was according to what you were seeing some of your Muslim friends doing. And it was only when you picked up the Quran that you realised that maybe there's a contradiction in some of their practices. Okay, so you had these Muslim friends, or Mediterranean, in the case of the Greek, I would assume, who had stronger family ties to what maybe you yourself were experiencing. And as you said, you went and got yourself a copy of the Quran. Did you meet any other Muslims after this?
After I left school, I went to work, and I worked with a Sunni brother, and I remember him fasting for the month of Ramadan, and I used to sit near him, so I just used to ask him questions all the time because I found it really fascinating that he was 20-something and he could actually be going out, going to nightclubs and getting drunk and things, but he chose not to. So why was it that people of the same age in the same office were doing those things, but yet this one guy wasn't? And I remember speaking to him and asking him lots of questions and things like that, and he gave me an ayah of the Quran, which for me just summed everything up in my life. And I remember him saying to me that, you know, life's hard, but it says in the Quran that like Allah doesn't give a soul more than it can bear. And it had a really profound effect on me because I actually really thought about what he said about this particular ayah, and it really made me understand some of the difficulties that I'd had in the past, and that actually you have two options. You can fight, you know, difficulties and just never progress. You just like stagnant with your thought, or you can choose to overcome them and become a better person. So it's almost like difficulties are a blessing, because through difficulties you learn patience and you learn to have strength that maybe you don't think that you actually have, rather than turning around and saying, I'm not going to deal with this problem. You've been given that problem for a reason, and Allah's given that problem to you because Allah knows your capabilities and knows that you are able to overcome this particular thing, alhamdulillah.
So these problems, or maybe a better word is challenges that you face, you would say that these challenges have been character building, a character building exercise for you?
Yeah, definitely. But that's not in the world that I had come from. For example, at school, that's not what you're taught they are. Not taught necessarily by parents or teachers, but by your peers.
Society, yeah.
So, yeah, like society. So, for example, you know, you have a problem at school, maybe you're not very good at something. Well, it's okay because you're going to drop that subject next year anyway. So there's always a solution to your problem, but the solution to your problem is not always the best one. Like the easiest one's not always the best one.
Sure.
Sometimes the harder, going through the hardship makes it easier at the end, whereas going through the easier route actually makes it harder in the long run.
Sure.
So, yeah,
alhamdulillah. So that's something that you've learnt. So, around about 18, you've had this interaction with friends in your younger years, you know, in your teenage years, and then you've met this person at work who's, you know, if you like, giving you more of an understanding of the Quran. So what were the next steps that you took in this process of becoming a Muslim?
The next steps, I mean, to be honest, there wasn't anything really specific from that point onwards. I then had, I had my daughter, my first daughter. And after I had her, I had a little bit of time off work, and then I went back to work. And it was really sort of, life was really boring, because I felt like I was going through a process which ticked all the boxes, but it didn't actually satisfy my soul. It didn't actually fill me. It's like eating but never being full. That's what life felt like. So I'd gone to school, I'd done my GCSEs, I'd done my A-levels, I then left. I chose not to go to university, so then I had to go to work. I had a child, I then went back to work, and it was this constant process. It's like going on, and you're not actually going anywhere in life. You're just earning money to survive. Yes. And even if you do get the big car and the big house, you're still not going anywhere. And for me, I always felt like quite empty. And I thought, well, you know, I've obviously got this child now, so surely that would mean, you know, things would click. And I thought, well, now I've actually got this child, I actually want more. I actually have a greater need to feel this emptiness that I felt. And I actually had a sister that I met who was born Muslim, come under that category where, you know, we don't eat pork, we don't drink, and we fast
during the month of
Ramadan. But all the other things,
everything else goes.
Everything else goes. As long as you do those boxes and mum and dad are happy with it, then the rest of it, you're just you're just like everybody else. And it was actually through them, they reverted back to Islam. So they were born Muslim, but they didn't really know what it was to be Muslim. It was just what they were told. And so they started to revert back. And it was only through spending time with them and realising it was like a big jigsaw puzzle, and you're just putting the little pieces together and you finally get the bigger picture of it. And I remember saying to her, but Muslims don't believe in Adam and Eve. And she was like, no, we do believe in Adam and Eve. And then, of course, it's like Adam and Eve and Abraham and Moses and Jesus and all these prophets, they all come under Islam. And I was like, okay, I never knew that. Like, why? How could I have not known that? But, of course, in the West, that's what we're given. We're given a very blurred picture of Islam, you know, like suicide bombers and terrorists and loud, shouty people and things like that, you know, with the oppressed women. So through her that I started to actually learn about Islam and realised that...
Is this your sister-in-law?
This is my sister-in-law, yeah. Okay. And I realised that it's actually really simple and it's actually very easy. And I remember saying to her, but praying 5 times a day. I have a child and I have to go to work and I've got washing to do. I've got a house to run, you know, I've got a home to run and all these other things. I've got friends to see. How would you, you know, how can anyone realistically pray 5 times a day? And of course she said to me, oh, well, Shias combine their prayers. And I was like, so you're basically saying that it's really hard and to make it easier for yourself, you're combining your prayers. And she was like, well, yeah. And I was sort of taken back by that. And she said, Islam's not supposed to be hard. It's there for you because it gives something to you, but it doesn't stop you from living your life. And I was like, okay, I've really got this whole Islam thing the wrong way around. And so it was through her that I started learning small bits, and it's always good to have someone on hand who, for me, I always try to trip up. So, you know, I'd say to her, but, you know, people blow themselves up and they go to heaven and they get 72 virgins and this big thing which we're always told in the West. And she was like, no, we don't believe in that, that's not right, and all this sort of thing. So I kept trying to trick her up, you know, trip her up with these questions. And she always came back with a logical answer. And I couldn't fault what she was saying. So if I couldn't fault it, did I, you know, it was like, so you kind of could say that I believed in it, but I didn't know if I wanted to be a Muslim, because if I'm a Muslim, then I want to make sure that I'm doing it properly. And how am I going to do it properly when I don't speak Arabic and I don't have this and I've never done this and all these sort of things? So
there's always a million and one question, reasons why
not
shouldn't.
to. Yeah, why not to?
And I guess from this sister, you mentioned combining the prayers. So obviously she was or is a follower of the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessing be upon them. So was this your first understanding of the complexities within Islam? In other words, that, you know, it's not just, well, we are all one body, Muslims, we all believe in one God, and obviously his prophet, his holy prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, and the book. But was this your first realization of the fact that, well, there were actually some differences, there were different shades of Muslim, different opinions within Islam?
Well, I always knew that there was the different sects. I mean, obviously there's I think the 2 main ones were obviously Sunni and Shia. And in my head, the Sunnis were the main body of people. And
the more rounded.
Well, because it's the majority, so you just assume that the majority are right. And the Shia were, from what I can understand, the troublemakers. That's the only way I could put it. Yeah, they were the crazy ones. Yeah. They were, you know, the ones running around with guns in their hands and things like that. And that's the sort of concept that I have of that I had of the Shias. And I obviously thought, because they're small, they're the smaller, the minority, then maybe they were a little bit crazy and, you know...
They have to be heard type of thing.
So they make a lot of, like, noise because there's only a few of them. But I realised that because I'd come to Islam, and obviously the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, was the messenger of Islam, I felt that, okay, so if I start right at the beginning and I learn about this personality, so I learn about the Prophet, then I want to know everything about him. So, like, I would start reading about him. And one of the things I realised is that, for me, I wanted to live by his code of ethics, by his morals.
Sure.
Because he was this perfect example. And I guess one of the things that came through, one of the things that was apparent, was I wanted to love those that he loved. And the people that the Prophet loved the most, of course, was his Ahlul Bayt, his family. And that's where I obviously started to understand the concept of Shias. And it was a very strange moment, because I remember sitting there thinking, but it's so obvious that the path for the Shia is correct versus the path of the Sunni. It makes logical sense for it to go, you know, these are infallible. They're not people that have sinned and erred along the way and then have nominated themselves to become the next successor. So for me, it just made logical sense that this was the correct path. And so there's me, one person, thinking that the rest of all these Sunnis, you know, I felt fortunate, alhamdulillah, because I felt like when I came to Islam, I came straight to the right door, so to speak, rather than going to all the other doors with the wrong key. For example, Sunnism and things like that. So, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. You mentioning that, actually, it reminds me of when I was converting, and I thought to myself, this all makes sense. You know, I have no arguments against it. Everything makes perfect sense. It makes so much sense that I'm sure that once I've converted, inshallah, within 20 years, my whole family would have converted, and half of the country would have converted. Not with the sword, of course, but just through logical argument. And then you slowly start to realise it doesn't work out that way. Is this something that you're familiar with, or?
Yeah, I recognise that. I felt like when I discovered Islam, for me, it was like, wow, this is the truth. You know, we're all searching for the truth. I think other people just find it at different points in their life. For me, I felt like I'd just been told the biggest secret ever. And it was the secret of knowing how to exist in the way that we should exist. And for me, when I first learnt about it, it was like you just want, you know, the way you can describe it is you want to get on the rooftops and you want to shout to everybody,
yes.
I know the secret, come to me and I'll tell you, and I'll tell you. And of course, so you're like this, and then other people don't obviously have your enthusiasm. It's like, well, you know, what is this religion? Then I realised that obviously this is not the path for everybody. And some people have different goals and different aims in life, and they're not the same as mine. So I obviously realised that very quickly, but then I realised that there are a group of people that have the same thought as me, and they do understand as well. And, you know, Islam is not for everybody, and I understand that. But I hope that, inshallah, what I know Islam's given me is it's taught me how to interact with people better. You know, it is really important. I wear hijab, so I'm representing the sisters of Islam. So it's taught me that I need to make sure that I'm treating people with respect, and, you know, I'm a proper person in society.
Really? So you'd say that hijab or not hijab, but Islam has helped you to interact with people better? And when I say people, I'm talking about not necessarily just Muslims, but even non-Muslims. Why? Because the impression normally, especially with a hijabi, is that, well, actually, this person is not going to be able to interact with me.
That's it.
I'm going to have to speak very slowly. Do you speak?
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. You know. Do you speak English?
That's it. I've had experiences of that. I've had people, if I've used the name I was born with, if I use the name Francesca, for example, on a telephone or in a letter, and when I turn up, I look like this, people have already made the assumption that because the name's Francesca, I'm going to look a certain way, I'm going to be a certain way. And when I turn up like this, they're a little bit, taken back, and they don't really know what to make of it. So for me, I know that it's important that people see that, we're human too, and, you know, I'm interested in the same things that you're interested in, and we like to go shopping, and we like to sit and have coffee, and I like to, you know, sit with my girlfriends and things like that, and we're just as concerned the way society is going as what you guys are. You know, my children go to mainstream schools, they go to state schools. You know, it's like my daughter participates in all the events. They had a Christmas activity week, and I told my daughter, we don't celebrate Christmas in the way other people celebrate Christmas. As in, we don't celebrate it because it's actually for Christians and it's about baby Jesus. But we love Jesus too, but they think it's something different. And for a 5-year-old, it's sort of hard to comprehend. I understand that, but it's important for me that my children know that, you know, you have to play a role in society. It's important for me to go out there and show I'm not oppressed. I do speak English. You know, I can hold a conversation with you. My religion doesn't hold me back. In fact, it makes me feel I've got more of an obligation to go out there and say I'm educated and, you know, I'm here in society. We're not hidden away behind doors.
Sure.
You know, we're here. We're mothers and we're sisters and we're daughters.
And you've got a part to play in society.
Well, this is it, and we take our role very seriously as women, and that's for me, that's what I feel, you know, Islam's taught me. I need to take my role seriously. Before I didn't. I feel like Islam's changed me from being like a teenage mentality to actually a woman's mentality, because I now appreciate and understand my own worth.
Alhamdulillah.
Whereas before, maybe not so much.
Sure.
So alhamdulillah.
Sure. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Sister Fatima. What we're going to do now, inshallah, is go to a short break, and then when we come back, we'll explore your experiences of the conversion, although I know there wasn't a particular conversion time per se, but maybe just some of your experiences while being a Muslim, and some of maybe the advice that you could give to us and our viewers, inshallah, from your own experiences. But so far, thank you very much. It's been very interesting.